Please join me in welcoming Mike Mahari.
Thank you very much. I am going to talk a little bit of 10th Amendment because that's what we do at the 10th Amendment Center, which I guess makes sense. We are a national think tank, and our goal is very simple. We want to see a restoration of the proper balance of power between the state and the federal government. A balance of power that is implicit in the Constitution, and a balance of power that is explicitly laid out in the 10th Amendment, which says in very, very simple language that any powers not delegated specifically to the federal government will be left to the states and the people. It's very simple. But the thing that's amazing to me is I talk to people and read different things and kind of interact, is that there are a lot of people that think that that position, that those of us who hold to the idea of state sovereignty and limited federal government, that we're somehow extremists and that we're radicals. And in fact, I've even been told that I'm dangerous. And I guess I'll be honest with you, if standing up for the system that our founding fathers intentionally created and being an advocate for liberty and freedom, if that is extremist, then I guess I'll wear that badge proudly. But I want to be really clear, to steal a phrase from our president, I'm not the extremist. In fact, the extremists are the people that are saying that the federal government should have almost limitless, sweeping power. The real radicals are the ones who want to see the federal government do things like take over your health care, or tell you what you can and cannot put in your body, or who you can or cannot marry. Those are the radicals when you look at what our founding fathers intended.
That's right.
I grew up here in Kentucky. I've spent most of my adult life in Florida, but I'm a Kentuckian at my roots, and I know Kentuckians, and Kentuckians by and large are a pretty independent lot. Kentuckians are pretty self-sufficient, and most Kentuckians that I've met don't take real kindly to people coming in and telling them how to run their business. You know, we're a state of farmers and coal miners and bourbon distillers and horse breeders, and we have our roots deep in the pioneer heritage, people like Daniel Boone. So it shouldn't come as a surprise if I tell you that one of the very first pushbacks against overreaching federal government happened right here in the state of Kentucky. Now, most of the time when you start talking about states' rights and state sovereignty, most people immediately go to the Civil War and they think about slavery. And it's true that that definitely was a part of that whole time period. But the states' rights and the pushback against federal expansion actually happened long before the Civil War. In fact, one of the first major incidents was in 1798, not very long after the Constitution was ratified. And during that time, there was winds of war were blowing. And there was a lot of fear that there was going to be a war with France. And kind of in response to this, Congress passed what was known the Alien and Sedition Acts, which are actually 4 separate laws. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I really encourage you to take some time and look it up if you get a chance. But the most nefarious of these laws was the Sedition Act. And basically what it did is it made what they called treasonable activity, it made it a high misdemeanor, punishable by fines or by jail. And what was really scary is what they defined as treasonable activity. It was, quote, any false, scandalous, or malicious writing. Now, it doesn't take an expert in constitutional law to see where that might be a little bit problematic with the First Amendment. And it doesn't take a prophet to understand and kind of realize that if the government has that kind of power, it's going to use it to crush dissent. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, not long after the laws were passed, the federal government began arresting the editors of newspapers that had dissenting opinions. And believe it or not, one of the people that was arrested and jailed was the grandson of Benjamin Franklin Bach. He was the editor of a paper in Philadelphia that was called the Philadelphia Democrat-Republican Aurora. The Democrat-Republicans were the party in the outs at that time, the Federalists being the party in power. And they actually arrested him for libeling President Adams. And that libel was basically saying how stupid the Alien and Sedition Acts were. So the people of Kentucky decided that they were going to stand up against this, and they passed a resolution in November of 1798. And that resolution was passed by the legislature. It was unanimously voted for by the Senate, and it was signed by Governor Garrett. And basically what that resolution said is it pointed out, line by line, why these laws were unconstitutional. And then it declared that those laws were null and void in the Commonwealth of Kentucky because they were not constitutional. They were outside the scope of what the Constitution allowed. I'm going to read a little part of what was written in that resolution. It said, where powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. That every state has a natural right in cases within this compact, which he meant the Constitution, to nullify of their own authority all assumptions of power by others within their limits. Now here's a little trivia question. Can anybody tell me who wrote the Kentucky Resolution of 1798? Does anybody have any idea?
Daniel Boone.
It was Thomas Jefferson, that's absolutely right. Third President of the United States penned those words. And he had it submitted in Kentucky as a resolution. And about the same time, James Madison wrote a very similar resolution that was passed in Virginia, saying basically the same thing. These laws are null and void because they are not constitutional. So you see, this is not the rhetoric of radicals. These were our founding fathers. Madison was considered the father of the Constitution. And they believed that the states had the autonomy and the authority to declare null and void laws that were not constitutional. This is the vision of our founders. They believed in a government that would have federal powers, which, as Madison wrote, were few and defined, and state powers, which would be numerous and indefinite. He wrote that in Federalist 45. And they created this system of government for a reason. And the reason is that they feared concentrated government power. They lived under it. They knew the potential of tyranny, and they understood that even people that have good intentions can become tyrannical when they have too much power. Washington put it very eloquently. He said, government is not reason. It is not eloquent. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. When I look at Washington, D.C., I see a government that has become a fearful master. And the only way that we are going to take back this nation is to stand up as states, to do things like he was talking about, repealing the 17th Amendment, and bringing back that proper balance of power. Because what our founding fathers envisioned were a government of the people, not of special interests, not of politically connected people, not of two parties, but of the people. So it's up to us to get out and vote and to do our parts. So I just want to thank you guys for letting me talk, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.